Okay, I have a couple comments to make on the city council meeting that was held on Wednesday, September 14th. I would usually write about it, but I'm gonna try doing it this way instead, so I can comment a little bit more freely about what happened. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go right to the meeting, and this first sequence is a series of approvals retroactively for the mayor to attend conferences. So let's listen.
I have an ordinance, item number 3, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2 adopted on April 13th, 2022, entitled an ordinance granting permission to the mayor to attend the African American Mayors Association annual conference. So moved.
Second. On the question? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilwoman Brown?
Aye.
Councilwoman Copeland?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gleason?
Aye.
Councilman Potteet?
Aye.
Council President Thompson?
Aye.
Item passes.
Okay, there's another one that they approve similar. And then when we get to the third one, that's where Lisa Copeland has a question. So let's jump right to that.
I have item number 5, an ordinance granting retroactive permission. Retroactive permission to the mayor to attend the United States Conference of Mayors 90th annual meeting from June 3rd, 2022 to June 6th, 2022. So move.
Second.
On the question? Copeland?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Brown, why were these submitted retroactively? Do you know?
I do not know, unfortunately, Councilwoman Copeland.
I believe these are for.
No, I know, I'm not new to the game.
They're for conferences.
Usually, after the fact. That's why I'm asking, because it's interesting that we vote on retroactive, but not the law department. Anyway. All right.
Councilwoman Copeland, I think there's a policy that probably needs to be put in place about traveling and conferences, and
there is, but no one follows it until we enforce it and not vote on it. But since this is, I'm not gonna make it. I voted on the last one, so I have to vote on this one. But there is a process for it, but no one follows it until we don't vote on their stuff and they don't get their money. That's my point for the next time. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Anything else on the question? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilwoman Brown.
aye.
Councilwoman Copeland. Maybe, no, there's no maybe, right? No, aye. Councilwoman Gleason. Aye. Councilman Potteet.
Aye.
Council President Thompson.
Aye.
Item passes.
Okay. So this was interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, they're passing things against apparently policy that exists. In other words, you come and get permission for spending on a conference before you attend the conference. You don't do the conference and then months later go back and get permission. That was one point that Lisa Copeland made. It seems like Daniel Brown may not have been aware that there is this policy. The second thing that was interesting to me about this was that Lisa Copeland said that in the future she wouldn't be voting on things like this, that people have to follow the rules, including the mayor has to follow the rules. You get approval before you attend the conference. You don't attend the conference and then come back and ask for approval. So we'll be able to see in the future if a requests retroactively to grant approval for spending, if Lisa Copeland sticks to her guns and does not vote it. The final point about this is how, in my mind, this is an example of a rubber stamp, of just approving stuff kind of thoughtlessly, right? In contrast to existing policies and procedures of the city. Now, this may seem small, well, it's just a conference. We're not going to deny the mayor going to a conference. But it's important to manage the little details. That is important to do. These are how the seeds of drift occur, right? Drifting off of policies, procedures, and rules occurs is that you just sort of you don't pay too much attention to it. And then over time, you're this not attending to these details becomes your standard practice, which appears to be the case right here. So that was the first thing, and I'll follow up down the road. I think we should all look and see if another item comes up, if Lisa Copeland says no. And then we should all ask the other council members, why are they so easily violating the rules? The second item of interest to me had to do with the city picking up some of the cost of a couple of new accounting professionals that will be hired by the Urban Renewal Agency. And the argument from the administration is that the cost can't be borne entirely by the Urban Renewal Agency because the amount of administrative costs that can be allocated through those grants, there are limits from the federal government on how much of the grant you can spend to administer it. The argument is that that's not enough to cover the actual costs of catching up on the years of problems, really. And so what they're requesting is for a split. Most of the costs will be covered by the URA. What can't be covered by the URA will be covered through the city. So that's the background. And what we're going to do is pick up where Lisa Copeland on the question is arguing against doing this. And then I'll leave some of the mayor's going to come on. She's going to argue for it again. So let's listen and how this unfolds between the two of them.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the question, Copeland?
Yes, but this first one eliminates the position of Director of Homelessness, right? If I'm not mistaken, that was what.
No, I believe that was position number 2, Budget Specialist 2. You are correct, Councilman.
Well, regardless, I'm not supporting this legislation because I think the money could be better spent in revenue generating positions. We have a Memorial Field opening. We're not sure how we're going to staff it. The last time we talked to the controller, he said he collected 82% of what was in the budget, and adding these new positions at this time, I do not think is good. So I will not be supporting it for those.
And these are grant funded positions.
That ended 3 years. They still added. The city still has to put out almost $180,000 in benefits. So that's where I am.
On the question,
on that point, the city receives north of $5 million in grant funds from the federal government. And the city has had a history of losing federal contracts because of not being able to administer those grant funds. I'm in support of this legislation and number 34, but I'm not in support of the Budget Specialist number 2 because I do believe, to your point, that that's an extra position that we don't need. However, without allowing planning to happen in this infrastructure, that there's a risk that we would lose the millions coming from the federal government because that has happened before.
What has happened before is the misuse of the money that came in these grants and people putting in people who were not qualified for positions. That's why money was lost. It had nothing to do with that. So and I'm right on this. And I can get the facts now. If we take a 5-minute break, I can go down to the clerk's office and find the legislation of positions we created with specific sets of job responsibilities that people were put in and could not do. So no, that's a no on that. That's not why the city lost the money. No, that's not why.
Well, the hope is that these people do know what they're doing.
Okay, let's stop right there. So fiery no from Lisa Copeland. And she's right. The problems in the past don't stem from an efficiently managed program that unfortunately just didn't have enough money coming in to administer it. The problem had to do with mismanagement, as she pointed out. I think Ed Potteet's approach is to try and be a little diplomatic about it. It's like 2 out of 3 positions. The one thing that I would say about the one idea that Ed mentioned was the hope. I don't think hope is a good strategy. I mean, it's good to be hopeful about the future and that things work out. That's certainly good, but that's not enough. We can't just sort of spend in hope. That is not good practice. Just to give you some context, Ed mentioned they spent about $5 million a year. This is the Paris report. You can find this on the website. This was the estimated 2021. Here's the proposed 2022. It's 3.5 million here in the referral packet. When the request is made, the number is a different number. The number is 2.1 or $2.2 million. So why is it $2.2 million here, but up here in the Paris report one, it's $3.5 million? That's a big difference, right? That's a big variance. And I don't understand. This is, I think, part of the problem with how things are done is there's not a lot of good explanation as, you know, how do you explain these differences? This was in the referral packet, this was the request for the money and the total spending. They're like, in addition to salaries, we're going to need to spend money on audits, environmental review, yada, yada. And as a result of that, we're going to exceed the cap. Now, my argument, which I made back in August, right, on August, was that, you know, there's another option, and that is to learn to operate more efficiently so that the administrative costs fall within the margin allowed by HUD, 20% for the CDBG and 10% for the home. This is one thing that I find is absent from all of these discussions is how do we get better at what we're doing? Why is the solution always just to throw money at the problem by bringing more people on? And without a good management plan, it seems to me that we'll just end up in the same position we were in the past if we don't address this, the ability to be better at what we do. All right, we're going to go ahead. The mayor is going to jump on.
3 projects ranked in the top 10 projects.
And I don't think we need to listen to this. The mayor, it's kind of long. And she's just arguing, yeah, we need this, you know, and if we don't get it, you know, this is where I think she gets a little coercive. It's all right, if we don't get it, well, we might lose the millions of dollars. But again, absent is a more technical explanation of what's going on, and zero discussion of efficiency, zero discussion of listen, we've got a really tight management scheme and we've mastered operational efficiency. And here's an example. And they could spell that out for us. And even despite that, we're coming up short. That I can get on board with, but it doesn't seem like there's any attempt at all to show that there's efficiency. The solution is to just add bodies. And that has not worked well in the past.
Mr. President, if I may.
Go ahead, Bob.
I also want to say that, you know, initially I was in opposition to these positions as well, because of the concern of adding expenses to the city in a time where we have so many financial issues. But I did have a conversation with the comptroller, and unless he's changed his position, he did a cost benefit analysis and identified that there was a significant benefit to the city with regard to the programs that we'll bring in, how much money it brings into the city.
Okay, so a couple things about that. One, it's nice that Councilwoman Brown had a discussion with the comptroller. I wish that was done in public. I wish that was done. He was called to present his cost benefit analysis and explain his cost benefit analysis to the citizens at a city council meeting. So we can pull that up. Let's pull up the cost benefit analysis. These assumptions need to be explained in public. Ed Poteet has a background in economics. My guess is he understands very well what a cost benefit analysis looks like. So if the comptroller was up there at the microphone having to justify this and explain the assumptions, for example, why 2%? Why not 1.5 or 3.5, which is kind of a typical range for something like this? The other thing I commented on is the fringe benefit cost. So look at budget specialist 3. You've got a fringe benefit cost of $66,000 against salary and FICA of $104,000. That's a big benefit load. Why so high there? 64% benefit, which is above the norm. I thought the city ran more between 35 and 40%. So it's good that there is a cost benefit analysis in the packet. I know one might argue that, well, you've hired people to make these decisions for you. That's why you elected them, because they've got expertise. I want to see it. And I'm sorry, I don't see any evidence of operational and fiscal expertise coming out of the city. So if you want to sort of allay the fears of some concerned citizens, then demonstrate that expertise by presenting it and discussing it openly in public. That would go a long way. Instead, what we get is hire and hope. And I don't think that's good. Let's get back. I don't know that there's much more to say here. Let's see.
Versus the cost that we pay for the fringe benefits. So that's why my position has changed on it, because he is also in support of it, and I think that is feasible.
That's pretty much it. They go on to vote. Copeland votes no, the others vote yes. So like a lot of my concerns, it's not the idea of hiring accountants to clean up the URA. There's no real, I don't have any problem with that. It's the presentation, the kind of sloppiness of the presentation, and city council members who are not, I think, asking hard questions, and asking for hard justification of things. So that for me is problematic. That's how I think you get into trouble, and you end up down the road where we are now. We are down the road of having unsustainable cost structure for the city. Oh, and one thing that came up at the meeting, I'll just share this and then we'll move on. We'll end this. Lisa Copeland asked about prior period benefits for URA employees who are no longer there. Presumably, these are the employees that the argument is being made were hired to do jobs that they were not capable of doing. Well, those employees have now retired from the URA and are entitled to benefits. Those benefits have not been paid. And I wrote about this as well. It came up at an urban renewal agency meeting in October. So this here shows retirement system funds that are unpaid dating back to April 2016. The problem is we can't pay for this debt, almost $1 million debt that we owe for employees who worked at the URA who apparently didn't know how to manage things, didn't keep records, all the things that we now have to spend for. We're also on the hook for those same people for $1 million, but we can't cover that cost through URA grant money. That cost has to be picked up by the local taxpayers, the city residents. Those are my comments on the September 14th City Council meeting.